Hi boys and girls, this is Karen. As you can see today, I'm not using the green screen because we're using a lot of green things for our activity, but that's okay. You'll be able to deal with it, right? No cool green screens. Sorry, Bill. So today, I wanted to carry on with the bird theme a little bit that we've been on the last few weeks. So last week we talked about what birds can eat, right? And what kind of birds you might see in Utah. And this week I thought it would be fun to go over a little bit more about how birds live or where they make their homes, things like that. So going on to that, we're going to make a nest later on in this video, but I wanted to tell you about a few of the super cool nests that I found while looking into this, okay? So the first kind of thing that I wanted to talk about was that there are some birds who don't even make nests for their eggs. And I had never really thought about that, but when you think about it a little bit more, you come to realize you know some of these birds too. For example, an emperor penguin uses its feet and places the egg on its feet and then just folds its feathers over the egg to keep it warm. So they don't even make a nest because they already have a built-in nest. Isn't that cool? I had never realized that before. The next kind of nest I wanted to talk about is called a scrape nest. And basically what this means is that the bird just sits down anywhere and has the egg laying on the ground. So they don't do a whole lot to keep it super protected because it's on the ground, but they always lay on it and keep it warm, so don't worry about that. But some of the birds that use this kind of nest are seagulls, or a lot of ducks do this. Sometimes they'll get a few things like some grass and just put it around, but for the most part, scrape nests are just on the ground. So that's kind of cool. If I were a bird, I might do a scrape nest because it's a lot less work, but shh, it's fine. I'm not a bird. We don't have to talk about it. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is called a cup nest. And the cup nest is probably more of what you guys would think of, or at least what I thought of when I heard the word nest. It's a lot of songbirds use this kind of nest, so it's probably the nest that you come across the most. And the cool thing about this nest is that we're going to make it today, so I'll talk about it a little bit later and show you a little bit more into how to make this kind of nest. The next nest that I wanted to talk about is called a pendulous nest. So if you guys might notice, it sounds a lot like the word pendulum, and I don't know how many of you guys have heard that word before, but I bet you know what it is, even without knowing that you know what it is. You know that scene in Frozen, I think most of you have seen this movie, where Anna is singing to Elsa about building a snowman, and she is just a little girl, and she's got her feet propped up on a big clock, and there's a part of the clock that's swinging back and forth, and she's pretending to hit it with her feet and make the little, that noise. You remember that scene? Well, that thing that is moving back and forth, that is called a pendulum. And this nest, this pendulous nest, is a lot like the pendulum shape. And the cool thing about this nest is that it is not really, it's hanging, right? So the cup nest, as you guys might know a little bit about, it sits in the middle of two branches, so it would be right here. But the pendulous nest, instead of being attached to branches and being held by branches, it just hangs down and can swing in the air if it needs to, or whatever. And it stays. Isn't that cool? I had no idea that birds could do this. And just imagine, they're making a hanging nest with only a beak and 2 feet. That's crazy to me. I don't know how they do it. Watched a few videos, still can't understand it. They're super cool though, so props to those birds, right? If you want to see a super cool bird making a nest like this, go onto YouTube and search weaver bird. They're in Australia and they are pretty cool. All right, the last kind of nest that I wanted to talk about is called an elevated complex nest. And I think you guys have heard of these birds before, but swallows make this kind of nest. So if you're ever in a building or at your house or someone else's house and you look up to the ceiling on the porch, so like outside of the house, and you see a bunch of mud stuck in a corner or something, that is a nest. And that is the swallow's nest. And the way that they make it, get this, it's super cool. The way they make their nests is they pick up mud in their mouth, and then they get saliva all mixed in with the mud, and then they'll just go and layer piece and layer of all the mud that they can find so that they can make this really cool complex nest that's high enough that hardly any other animal can get up to it. Isn't that crazy? But even crazier than that is that some swallows don't even use mud. They just use straight out saliva, straight out spit to make their nest. Isn't that so weird? I feel like that would be kind of gross, but you know, you do you, Pikachu. Whatever floats your boat and keeps your eggs happy, right? So, some of these birds are super cool, and their nests are even more cool. And I would be way interested to know if you guys knew of any other nests. I know there's quite a few, but these are just some of the cool ones that I came across. All right, so to start out with making our nest, you have to know a little bit more about how birds make the nest. So this cup nest that I've got an example of right here, this was my first experiment, I guess, my first try at this. It probably turned out better than all the other ones, but you know, yours will probably look a little bit more better. Anyways, so the thing about these nests is that they are actually two nests in one. That's right, 2 in 1, meaning more work for the bird, but whatever, it's cool. The way that these birds make these nests is that they first start with a bunch of really hard and stable things, so like twigs, or roots, or moss, or bark, or all of those things, and they make a really big outer nest, right? So this part that you can see up to like here, that is the outer nest. But then, instead of just being done, they continue in and make another nest, a softer nest. So they have an inner nest and an outer nest. But the inner nest is made out of a lot of more soft materials. So they will typically use feathers, either their feathers or someone else's feathers if they can find them, or they will use fluff, if there's any fluff. If you guys have seen the cotton that sometimes flies in the air during this time, they love to use that in their inner nest. Or, weirdly enough, and I don't understand this, they use pine needles. I never really thought pine needles were soft, but you know, it's cool. You do you. It's okay. I actually ended up using some pine needles in this because I wanted to know what they found appealing in pine needles, and it's actually, they're very convenient because they're somewhat straight and relatively strong, but they are kind of soft as long as you don't get to the pokey part. So, the first thing that I need you guys to do in order to make your nest is to go out and find as many of these materials as you can. Make sure before you go that you ask your parents either to help you find them or tell them where you're going or just go into the backyard. And the second thing I want to warn you guys about is that you should be safe when you're collecting these things, okay? And respect the land that they are on, all right? So if they aren't on your property, then you should probably ask or find things on the ground. Okay, the third thing that I'm going to advise you guys about, and the reason that I don't have a cool green screen, is that greener twigs or greener branches, so greener meaning more recently off the tree, are easier to work with because they bend without breaking. Usually when you are outside and you find sticks on the ground, they will snap pretty easily because they're dead and they're not really attached to the tree. But if you find some twigs that are more recently attached to the tree, it's easier to bend them, okay? I'm going to use weeping willow branches because they are very easy to work with, and I happened to have a weeping willow at my house, so that was lucky for me. If you don't have that though, that's okay. You can work with any other kind of twig. Just again, remember that you're being respectful to the land. Try as hard as you can to only get things off of the ground. And if that's not possible, make sure that you're asking whosever plants you're going to take that ask if you can take them, okay? Because we want everyone's to stay happy and to stay safe. So, again, I'm going to start with the bottom part of the nest. And I found the easiest way to do this is, again, I'm going to take my willow tree twig, and I'm going to make a circle just like this. Okay, so I'm going to make the circle just like this, and then I'm going to hold it with one hand and use a little bit thicker of a piece of grass and try and tie it, okay? And if you don't have thick grass, that's okay. You can just start using other twigs and wrapping it around, all right? I just found this was a little bit easier for me because then if I ever slipped on accident, they would still stay relatively connected. So then the next thing that I did is I take another branch, as you can see, another twig, and I'm just going to wrap it in. Here, I'll do it a little bit differently, okay? So I'm going to put it in and hold that one there, and then do you see how this is already kind of wrapping around that branch right there, that twig? So then I'm going to put it up and through it so that it's wrapping around, and then I'll do that one more time so it's wrapping around, and one more time so it keeps wrapping until I feel like there's nothing left to wrap. And then I'm going to take another one and do the exact same thing, but I'm going to start it over here so that the this part that I'm holding will have something else to hold it. So again, I just put it in and then wrap and in, and then I'm going to wrap that part. Just wrap as much as you can. And if it takes you a few times to figure this out, that's okay. There are a lot of ways to make nests. I'm just showing you the way that I found the easiest. It doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means that that's how I do it. Okay, so I'm just going to do that a few more times, or a lot more times. I'm not going to be able to make the whole nest with you guys because that takes a little bit of time, but I will start it with you and show you what you could look like. Okay, so I have a lot of leaves on this, and the reason that I've kept them on is because it makes the nest a little bit thicker, and that is easier to keep for later when you put more of your pine needles and other things through the middle of it. Okay, so I'm just going to try and do a few more of these. See how far I get. Just wrap and wrap. Let's start over there this time. Wrap, go in and around. This is also a really good way to make a twig crown if you are interested. I know all of you boys will love that. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a pretty good start here, so that's good. And here we are, our start of our nest. Okay, I would keep going until I ran out of supplies, most likely. But we're going to stop here for right now, and I'm going to show you how to make the inner nest once you've gotten to this point. So once I got to here, I used these twigs for another kind of purpose, and I actually just shoved them through the other ones that I had wrapped earlier and across the middle so that there's a little branch right there across the middle. And then I kept doing that with other small branches just so that there would be a little bit more of a bottom, because I never could quite get enough branches for the whole bottom nest to be filled in by just wrapping. So I had to find another way to get a bottom for my nest. So you can see I have one and then another one, and I'll do maybe one more. Oh, my nest is coming apart. And when that happens, that is okay. You just have to try and rewrap things again. And I'm going to use another piece of big grass and see if that helps. Just going to tie it. It's a little hard to do right now because there are a lot of leaves in the way, but that's okay. All right, just like this, okay? And then you would keep putting sticks or twigs or whatever you have in the middle. And then once I got to that point, I started actually using little pine needles as well and shoving them in the same way that I did the twigs. Just moving them across so that they're down the middle. And keeping all the other stuff that I'm going to put in just a second in the nest. Okay, so I know this doesn't look super finished right now, but that's all the time I have for that part of it. Once you've gotten a nice bottom to your nest, a nice bottom layer, you can start using grass and putting that in as your soft little inner nest. Or if you do have fuzz or feathers that you would like to use and your parents okay with you using, you can use those things too. If I were you, I would just kind of place them all on top of that little bottom of your nest, and then you're done. And again, boys and girls, I hope you have as much fun with this as I do. If you have to redo things a few times, that's fine. I would encourage you to do this outside so you don't have to clean up as much of your nest. And make sure that you ask your parents before you do this. And next week, I'm planning on helping you guys learn how to make a little bird for your nest. So hopefully you will come back again, and thank you for joining me for this video. It was really fun. It's nice seeing you guys. I miss you guys a lot, and I hope you have a good week. Bye!